Welcome back to Hardball. Well, it's no secret that President Obama and his top people have been openly critical of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, of the insurance companies, of Fox News, and, of course, Wall Street executives, not to mention Rush Limbaugh. They're after him all the time. But does calling out opponents mean you're headed towards Nixon-era paranoia and drawing up enemies lists? That's what the Republicans are saying. In fact, one very respected Republican, the senator from Tennessee, Lamar Alexander, thinks it could be exactly what the Democrats are doing. Here he is with Andrea Mitchell of NBC News earlier today. Let's listen up.
The presidency is a very valuable institution, and it's diminished when the president brings street fighting and brawling into the White House. I mean, the idea of a president saying, I'm going to call you out if you oppose me, or it's coming very close to adding up all of the people who are against him and turning it into an enemies list.
Well, will the strategy that the White House is following of singling out people like Rush Limbaugh, like Fox News, like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce work? Joining me now is Democratic strategist Steve McMahon, who has an interest in full disclosure here, as always, and he's done some work for the Chamber of Commerce. And Republican strategist Leslie Sanchez, whose news book is called You've Come a Long Way, Maybe. I love that, like instead of baby. Okay, let me, your thoughts first. The Republicans have been getting a whacking here tonight, so I'm going to let you start.
Well, thank you.
Is the president correct in singling out Thomas Donahue, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, people like Rush Limbaugh on the air as his enemies? Not saying I'm making them my enemies, but identifying them as for what they are. His enemy. Are they his enemies?
I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that the Chamber of Commerce is going to be against a lot of his policies that are.
Do they want him to fail as president?
No, I don't think
that's. I
don't think that.
As Rush Limbaugh, he said he wants him to fail.
That's an old debate. I think we've gone past that. And let's not discount the fact there were some really high-level, I won't name their names, but Democratic political operatives who were counseling the White House to come up with these enemies like Rush Limbaugh, especially at a time when Obama's approval ratings were starting to, take a hit. He's just starting to get his
Was it smart?
No. I mean, but look, a school board president knows that they have an enemies list.
Well, something's working here because the Republican Party now is identified as their party by 1 out of 5 Americans now. 1 out of 5 Americans, and this includes Utah and Mississippi, South Carolina, very conservative parts of the country. And including them all, only 1 in 5 Americans say, I'm a Republican. That seems to be very small. Something's working here.
Something's working, but I got to tell you, I've been in rooms with Tom Donahue at times when he's said to business leaders, where he's head of the U.S. Chamber, when he said, we do not want this president to fail. We're going to disagree with him on some policies.
Whereas Rush Limbaugh has said that very thing.
The Chamber supported the president's stimulus package, much to the chagrin of a lot of their members. So, I mean, I think the Chamber is kind of an interesting diversion. Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, the people who are speaking for the Republican Party, or purporting to speak for the Republican Party, who are saying that they want the president to fail, which Tom Donahue is not saying, are the people that the White House, I think, are trying to define the issues around. And to some degree, it's working. You mentioned, though, that 1 out of every 5
Are you sure
voters,
it's working?
Well, here's
You're building up the paychecks of a lot of people on the right, first of all.
Well, it's working for Rush Limbaugh, but it's also working for the White House in this sense. Rush Limbaugh doesn't have very high numbers. I don't think anybody, with all due respect to Mr. Donahue, in America knows who Tom Donahue is, or really knows that much about the Chamber. They know Rush Limbaugh
right now.
They know Rush Limbaugh, and they don't like him very much, and so it's good for the White House. But you mentioned the only 1 out of every 5 voters is a Republican now. You know, the number that's going up is 42% now identify themselves as independents, which I think is evidence that Obama during the campaign was right. People are tired of the divisiveness.
Yeah. But see, that's the point. Obama ran on the plan that he was going to be a different type of voice, a different tone in Washington. I mean, let's be real. Every presidential candidate pretty much runs on that, on the reform idea. But it's done a couple of things. One, you mentioned it. It's a distraction. Yes, is it a distraction because of this effort? We're not seeing kind of the momentum on health care that maybe the president or the White House wants to see. Maybe they haven't articulated their plan on Afghanistan yet. Who knows? But political operatives, we know this much, are probably behind that messaging. But with respect to independence, what it does do and how it does hurt the Republicans is every time it's looking as if Rush Limbaugh is the voice of the Republican Party. Many independents, moderates, suburban kind of conservatives step away from the party because they don't like that type of rhetoric, that type of
that's by the way, is what's working for the White House. John Boehner and Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck and the people who are pretty well known and have pretty bad numbers.
Let's take a look at John Boehner because he took the shot today. He made the point. Let's listen on this very thing. Let's listen to him.
If you look at these attacks on people who question the administration, you begin to wonder what the real plan is. And it really does, to me, look like a Chicago-style politics. Like they're trying to demonize their opponents and do everything they can to make them distasteful.
Wow. I have a different take on Chicago-style politics. It's not as awful as that. I think they've just been very clever, your party, in acting as if they're the only governing party and pointing a lot of attention, not to John Boehner. They never mentioned his name, or to Mitch McConnell. They never mention their names. They talk all about these noisemakers out there, so that becomes the alternative. What do you think? Is that smart?
No, I never think it's...
By ignoring the Republican leadership, is that smart? And going after the enemy?
The only fraction of support it may have given them is pulling along these independents, kind of having them, pull more in the middle. He's lost a lot of independent support. But I will tell you this much: it's never a good strategy to elevate your enemies in that sense. Look at Lyndon Johnson. Listen to those tapes. He said, I mean, that's not. But
he wants to. It seems like he wants to elevate Rush.
Johnson said that heads of the three networks were communist. I mean, let's put it in perspective.
But he's not elevating Boehner and the elected Republicans. He's not electing that guy.
They're going back to a strategy they think worked for them in the spring of identifying radio hosts.
It did work for them in the spring. And if you talked about they are acting like they're the only governing party. They are the only party that's offering solutions to the problem. What they're doing very effectively, I think, is defining the Republican Party as the party of no, not so much, not so fast, not today. And that's really been effective.
The dithering party.
The dithering party, exactly. Thank you very much. Now, the divide and conquer is a strategy that works politically. It's not necessarily a strategy that is going to get more people into the Democratic fold, but it's a strategy that's going to win for them on Capitol Hill, unfortunately, and it's going to be one that will
Let me ask you, as a pro, watching the White House, do you think it's a deliberate, middle-of-the-night decision they made? Anita Dunn, their communications director, a real pro. Do you think they put together a strategy with Robert Gibbs and Axelrod and the president even enjoying it and participating in it to identify a group of surly people out there that they think they can make themselves look good by attacking? Do you think they have this as a deliberate strategy?
Well, they were all on the same message point. You can't speak to whether the president was involved in that, but it's definitely political strategy 101. They're identifying that. But why would they elevate the enemies that way? Again, does it point to distraction?
Do you believe they sat down and put this together as a strategy to say, let's go after Rush, let's go after Beck, let's go after the chamber?
I think it's a strategy. Whether or not it's effective, I don't think, frankly, I think the Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck strategy is more effective than attacking trade associations in town for doing their jobs. Frankly, most people in America don't know what trade associations do and don't really care. They do know what Rush Limbaugh represents. They know what Glenn Beck represents. They know what John Boehner represents. And the White House has been very successful making the Republicans the party of no. And they should stay on that tack because it's working for them.
Okay, thank you. Last word?
No, they did this before. They're doing it again. Same old tactic.
Okay, it's great having you on, Leslie.
That's the congresswoman.
There's another, Loretta, too. There's Leslie, all else.
And we're not related.
Leslie Sanchez, thank you for joining us, and thank you, Steve McMahon. You're the Republican. He's the Democrat.